Okay, this time we're going to be looking at a Monsters of the Deep. This one's mine. I bought it many years ago, and it's been sitting in its package. I don't remember if I bought it new or if I bought it used, but we're going to open it up, take a look, and we're going to see what it's going to take to fix or change the lights that are inside here, since I see a lot of people are having issues, especially with this part, getting to light bulb. So, it's an unboxing, because I honestly used to buy the ones I liked, and if I didn't have room for them, I just put them away, never opening the packages. I've learned since then. There we go. And out. Let's get the adapter out, since I'm sure it's AC. I'm going to say I bought it used because of the stains on the adapter. Yeah, AC adapter, 12 volts AC, 500 milliamps, so half amp. Snow Village, Monsters of the Deep. So, let's check if it works. It works. We got flashing lights in the lower aquarium, solid lights in the top and the side, solid light in here with a rotating barrel of, well, fish, sea creatures, all sorts of stuff. So, alrighty. I see the bottom center is looks like a standard light bulb. Just looking through the roof. This is like a nightlight. It's a 12-volt bulb, as you can read. They are not impossible to find. They still have them. Believe it or not, I've still found some of these in 12 volts at even a Goodwill, and some of the old school nightlights. Kind of strange. You can also get them in LED now. Normally I'd use a screwdriver or a spudger, but today I'm going to go old school and just use a knife. Sorry about the dog. Apparently somebody's here. Be back in a moment. Okay, sorry about that. Apparently somebody was looking for the neighbors. Wrong house for delivery. So, back to peeling this open. Anyway, the other reason I'm using a pocket knife is I use a pocket knife all the time for prying stuff open on the job. It's just a tool, but I wanted something with a more rigid blade than a spudger, because I don't really want to damage this plastic. I've seen some pictures online of people popping these open, and I wanted something with more surface area. So we have a basic circuit board. We have 2 capacitors. And on the bottom, we have some discrete components. Looks like a voltage regulator, some capacitors and resistors. So there's no computer chip, which is good. So if something on here fails, you might be able to replace it and keep the unit functioning. So, I'm sure some of you who have on this piece know that there's no access to this through here, but it was worth double checking. Like I said, I've never opened one, so this is new for me. Some glue. So, technically, if something on the circuit board gets damaged, you should be able to rebuild it. It's a pretty basic circuit board. All right. I'm just inspecting how they put this together. Okay. Looks like this whole section is a seam right here, and they're using the moss to cover it. It's not attached in here, and you can see the seam around the base. So I'm thinking probably have to heat it up and break the resin glue here, around here, probably up here under the moss. Just to get in here and change that light, if it ever dies. Which I'm sure it will. So, yeah. I don't know if you can see the motion. It's not attached. There's only a small piece holding it right there. Probably because of its age. It's breaking down from age. I am wondering if it'll separate in here. Let me get a closer look at it. I'm also going to plug in the hot glue gun to glue the bottom back on, so it stops falling off. Originally, it looks like it was glued on with some hard glue. Super Gorilla Glue would work, but I like to use hot glue if possible. That way, if I ever have to service it, I don't have to try and crack that hardened glue, because that can be a pain. So that's going to heat up. See if we can work out a separation. I'm just probing at the moment. Putting the knife in and applying a little bit of pressure to see if there's any movement or if I hear anything. There's some movement right there. get the heater on. I'm setting the heater, the heat pen, for 150 degrees Celsius to try and heat up any resin in here. It's not going to damage the porcelain, but it can damage the paint. But before I go too much further, I want to stop this from falling out. So I'm going to glue this back in. There we go. Alrighty. I'm using a very narrow nozzle. It's also a reason I don't want to get it extra hot, because I can't flow enough air through this nozzle to go to a super high temperature. And again, I'm using a knife because it's more rigid and I get better surface area for pressure. This is starting to separate from the house. This is the main body. I'm just lightly sweeping it up and down the glue that is painted the same color as the tile and the stucco wall. Oh yeah, it's nice and pliable. So that's separated. Now let's see if I can get underneath the lip. What I'm doing is I'm putting tension. So if it starts to lift, it'll slowly lift in my hand. Which it's not doing. So now I'm going to put tension this way and try and work on the front. couple of these columns are actually loose. Just seeing if maybe the top will just come off. I think it's just held in with the columns. They're plastic. And that one's not even attached. This one is. This one is. That one's not. This one is. That one is. Change it over to a blade screwdriver for a moment. There we go. Just to get a little extra leverage. Probably still going to have to pop the base out to get to the light. But at the moment, I'm going to get the top off by pulling the bottoms of the columns out. Since these two and one here is loose, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are stuck, I might have a better chance of getting the top off. I don't want to heat this too fast and too hot because this is plastic. At 150 degrees centigrade, that will melt plastic. Yeah, it's all soft now. That one was really stuck on. But it's got extra glue on it because it holds on some of the moss. So the hardest one's going to be this guy in the back. Caught on this moss, so let's peel this back like so. All right. You can see the little divots. I thought that one came out, but apparently it did not. This one did, but it's got a really long. Oh, it's the stud that goes all the way through. So it has a metal shaft that goes through the plastic, at least on this one. So there's your window that's frosted and cracked. Okay. There's 4 LED lights on the bottom. The little circuit board with the capacitors and the discrete components on the other side, most likely those are just to control these and the motor. Capacitors are probably to get the noise out of the motor. They're going to be filter capacitors because the motor on AC will, especially on AC, will flicker these LEDs. These are just 4 little white LEDs. If this fails, these lights, either they break, they get smashed, you lose 1 or 2 of them, you're going to have to disassemble the whole thing to solder them back in. So, let's figure out how to get the whole thing out. We're already committed. I'm going to try and unclip the plastic, the barrel. There's a couple of clips on the sides I see. All right, they don't want to come out easily. I'm not going to force them because I don't want to damage the painted picture of the monster fish. So we need to get into this base. So there's going to be two ways to do it. Either try and break it free from the bottom, which I already started, or we can try and separate this plastic. This piece right here is plastic. This center feels like a resin. This bottom piece is plastic. Or no, it's resin, never mind. So you have a plastic top and then a resin rest. This is resin too. This is porcelain. And the bottom is porcelain. Resin is susceptible to heat, which is why we can separate it with breaking the glue down, because everything gets really pliable. I still have some motion because I did break the glue free here and I broke a little bit free here. I'm going to try and just work on this lip, and I can put some acetate glue in here, thin super glue, and drip it in here to readhere this. And that I'm not too worried about because I don't want to damage the paint, so I'm going to leave that. And I can put a few drops down in here to readhere it to the front, because it doesn't have any there to begin with, but just if I wanted it extra secure. So the first thing we're going to have to do is separate this moss, because this moss is gluing across the plastic into the resin. So break it free. There's the spot right there where it was glued. And there's some glue right here, which I just chiseled out with the tip of the knife. Right there, it's still stuck to one of the pieces of the moss. Man, I can't think. So we'll just get you a little closer view. There's the 4 lights. You know what I'll do? Let me plug this bad boy back in so you can see them light up. You can see they're just 4 white LEDs. There's really no flicker because they are smooth. They're using those capacitors to smooth the signal so that you don't get a flickering effect, because it's an AC unit and LEDs run on DC. You can run them on AC, but they'll flicker. So now I'm going to try and work my knife and the spudger around the plastic and see if I can just crack the glue without getting it hot again. Since I already heated the top of the plastic up to get the columns off, there's more moss or vine I have to separate. And more glue. There we go. Yeah, this is hard glue. As you saw, this was a fully functional house, and I'm going to try and keep it that way because I'm actually considering getting rid of it. It doesn't fit my display. I bought it because I thought it was cool, and I'm not going to say it's not cool, but it doesn't fit my motif. I have one house that doesn't fit my display, and that's all I really need, is to have one that doesn't fit. It's like having an all-white room, putting a red chair in it. It's just something to make it pop and stand out. If you do anything with decorating a house, you'll understand the principle. But I know a lot of people out there look for this piece, and it's a sought-after piece, which is probably why I bought it. And it's slowly coming. I got some glue strings right here I got to cut. There's one. It looks like this is actually glued down with possibly hot melt glue, because it's stretchy. Very stretchy. There we go. And like typical, they don't have a lot of slack. There is a way to make more slack so you can pull this up more. Of course, I just glued the bottom back on, so should have waited. But it's hot glue. It's easy to peel. Like that. To make more slack, we need to get the circuit board closer to here. So I'm going to rotate the board and stick the whole thing inside. Like that. And look, now it comes out all the way. You got some glue strings. We have a standard 12-volt synchronous motor, which is very similar to the one I just bought to test. This is an AC motor as well. It's a little too big. You can find the synchronous motors online in AC. There is some that are hard to find with the Department 56, especially their Ferris wheels, because they're super thin pancake motors. Alright, we need a Phillips screwdriver. Take the motor out. Too small. This thin black and white wire is your LEDs. The heavy black wire is your motor. For those who are looking to get a motor in advance, if theirs quits spinning and they know their motor's bad, it is a 2-watt, 50-60 Hz, 5/6 RPM, 12-volt AC motor. The part number is E105B87, I believe. Hold on a second. Let me get some magnification on. No, it is E105587 is the part number. And then the manufacturer is JYA Chen Enterprises Co. Ltd. And they have a internal part number, it says, of JC, like, well, if you believe in Christmas, Jesus Christ, -2020. I'm sorry, 902. God, hold on. There we go. Sorry, the internal part number is JC902D, like David. It's really hard to see. I apologize. So, E10, 55, 67, or 87? 87. Boy, I'm not helping at all with these numbers. E10, 5587 is the part number, and JC-902D is the internal part number. I'm sure either one of those might bring you to it. 12-volt AC, 2-watt, 50-60 Hz, 5/6 RPM. So, all right. Now, how do we get to these LEDs if they ever need to be replaced? Or for those who have broken ones, we need to get this rotor assembly out. Looking. I do not see how they have it clipped in. The LEDs might be the hub that holds it together, so I'm just going to put a little pressure on it and see if I get any motion out of it without breaking any of the lights. No, that's pretty solid. There is no separation in this housing. Everything has to come out from the top. I can't tell you when it's broken how easy it is to fix. If these two wires are still up inside, I just break out that center hub and then solder the LEDs in, since the center section does not spin. The hub is just there to help hold it into angle. You can put any LED in there, or in this case 4, and then put hot glue and stick them in so they're pointing up at different angles. But I'd like to get it apart to get a better look. And I'd like to get this outer ring off, the part that's spinning. You know, the lights don't move. You got 4 clips here, but the clips aren't doing anything that I can tell. I've unclipped them from the plastic, and the plastic still is not separating. So I think they probably glued it in as well, which would make sense. You can't just rely on a mechanical grip on something that's going to spin all the time and be subject to thermal changes. Hot and cold, hot and cold. So, let's see. Down below where you can see, I'm going to put a little pressure and see if I can see if there's any glue. Almost sounds like it, but I think what I'm doing is I'm just stretching the plastic. Oops. Grab the outer wheel. This one definitely has me stumped. Huh, there is a clip that's holding that center LED hub on. And I got the magnifiers on. See if I can get that clip. Cannot get it to release. Looks like they may have used glue, which is really hard to get to. I get any of this plastic out. didn't break it, if that's what you think. What I did is there's staples. You staple this together at the bottom, and the staple is overlapping the plastic. I'm trying to lift the staple off the plastic to see if I can get it to separate the get the plastic pictures out. There's a total of 3 staples, 1 at the top, 2 at the bottom. 1 at the top I don't care about, it's just the ones at the bottom that are in the plastic. I need a spudger. Yeah, this inner blue plastic that has the coral and stuff printed on it is glued on the inside edge. I'm trying to use a spudger to break the glue now that I got the staple out of the plastic. It's a hard glue. That's why it's doing the cracking sounds now. That was probably some of the cracking too when I got the staple, because of course the staple is going through the glue. It's going through the glue as well. And once I get it out, we'll find out if this was necessary to fix these lights. I won't know until I can get into the lights to see if there's an easier way to do this. Unfortunately, because they don't tell you how to fix these things, because of course they're not designed to be repaired. That side's free. There's 3 curved pieces that make a complete circle that this is attached to. I've now freed it from 2 of the 3. So I'm on the 3rd one now. Hopefully once I crack enough glue, I can pull this center piece up and get a better view. Unless there's glue or something I'm not seeing, this should take care of it. If I can get the last of this glue. Apparently I missed a spot right there. There we go. So there's the inner ring. And you can see this white line where the screwdriver has been poking. You can see the divots. That's the glue. And you can see it's curve, space, curve, space, curve. And that's the staple I was talking about. That staple, the side that's bent on the inside, actually went through one of the 3 pieces of plastic. So that's the inner one. I wonder if the outer one is the same way. Same thing. I'm going to put a little pressure on the inside and see if it starts cracking the glue. I just want to see if I can find a place where I can get the screwdriver in without damaging anything. Well, they definitely have it glued. I can see some of it right here from the outside looking down. But I can't get in there to separate it. And I don't want to use the heat because this thin plastic will melt really fast. Let's see if I can possibly force it from the outside. They got 3 notches in it. I don't know if this does. It does not. For those 3 finger tabs I was talking about, there's 3 notches. Probably the original design, or they use the tabs to hold this in place for the glue. I'm not sure why they're even there. Or maybe it's just a generic base they use for other things and it fit perfectly for this. Don't know. All right. Going to see if I can get an X-Acto knife to break the glue enough that I can get the screwdriver in. Try and, since it's got a better wedge for a tip. Looks like it might have worked. Either it worked or I cut the plastic, one of the two. If this is the way to do it, make sure you take your time and carefully go around the edges. I am cutting the glue, as far as I can tell, and not the plastic. Although if I cut the plastic at the bottom, you're not going to notice it. But my goal is not to destroy it, since I need to put it back together. So that side is now separated. And my first one did go through the plastic, it looks like, but everything else has just been cutting the glue. So take your time, cut yourself, try not to damage the unit, and work your way around the 3 crescents of plastic until you can get it off. And again, that's only if you need to do this to fix this. I won't know until I get it off to see how this center section comes apart. I'm going to damage my unit so you don't have to damage yours if this will fix a problem. And if I can get it all back together in one piece, like I said, I'm probably going to get rid of this one. It does not match my motif. Oops. Alright, that's 2 of them. Last third. Oops. Blade came out. It's not pretty, but it's out. Alright, let's get the sharp object away. The center, it's got a notch right in here. Looks like a small prying implement. Might get in there. I'm gonna try and use these needle nose. They have more surface area. Nothing. What I'm doing now is pressing on the bottom of the big gear to see if it's just pressed in. Might just, I'm wondering if it's just pressed through and then they put a dab of glue on it. I would love to be there when they assemble some of these, I'll tell you that. It's probably so simple and I'm missing it. Or it's literally just glued in as a central axle where the outside edge of it is solid and the inside rotates and they literally glued it in. I don't see any glue though. Putting pressure on the gear, you might be able to see the outer ring, to try and see if that'll lift. See if maybe the gear is just pressed over the top. And while I'm doing that, I'm looking at the center hub where the lights are to see if there's any, if I see any tension movement on that. which I don't. Something just happened. Possibly did it break free? Nah, I clipped the motor mount, the piece that the motor attaches into. All right, well, let's carefully apply some heat. Takes a second to get up the temperature. There we go. Try not to get the wires too hot to where they melt. Alright, well, I'm going to continue working at this. I don't want to keep you all watching for an hour trying to figure this out, since we're already at almost 50 minutes here. Once I get it apart, I'll tell you how I did it. Hopefully I don't break it. So I'll return. Hopefully this will be apart, so I can show you how to fix or replace these lights, either with the factory 4 or one big one or a couple of small ones. You know, if you don't like it as bright as it is, we'll go from there. I'll return. Okay, we're back. Figured it out. You should remove these. You don't have to. There are ways to do it without removing them. But that little notch I was telling you about, that looks like a tab, is right there. Let me turn this off. Have it on so you can see that it actually still functions. See it in the plastic right there. It's glued on. That's the glue. There's the glue. What I ended up doing was using a little blade screwdriver and slowly prying it up. I noticed that when I took it apart and was using magnifying glasses, I could see that it wasn't on flush and that it was two pieces of plastic. Doing anything with the bottom is pointless. So, you can technically replace these lights without tearing this whole thing apart. It's not easy. I would probably recommend, for ease, to tear it apart, unless you're afraid you're going to break the plastic or resin pieces. Then don't. Anyhow, once you get this free, if you don't want to take these 3 rows of plastic off, use a pick. This is a 90-degree pick, or get a small screwdriver like this and bend it into 90 degrees. Heat it first so it doesn't just snap. Reach down inside and slowly work on it, or use some long pliers They don't have to be this long. This is excessive, but it's what I have in here. And wobble it and work it till it breaks free. And then pull this up to your working area. Now, in here are 4 white LEDs. And they are wired in series. Reason being, if they're wired in parallel, they'd have to run another resistor. So, draw it out. The symbol for an LED is that. But to make it easier to understand with these, because they're basically white cylinders, I'm going to draw them kind of like what they look, and in a very similar pattern to how they're protruding through that plastic. Oops. Not the scale. Each LED has 2 leads coming off of it. And we'll just do everything on this side is positive, and everything on this side is negative. They have them wired like that. So all the negatives are connected to the positives in a big circle. Let me rephrase that. Make it look a little better. And then they have the power coming in. And it's soldered on. And then they have a piece of heat shrink over the positive, so this and this wire don't smack each other because they're actually next to each other inside of here. That's why they're black and white. The black wire is the hot. The white wire is the negative, or the positive and negative. So each LED that they're using has a forward voltage of around 3 volts, just a hair over. All 4 of these LEDs are running at 12 volts. If they ran these at the 3 volts, they would be in parallel and they need another resistor on that circuit board. So on that circuit board, they have a bridge rectifier that is taking the 12 volts AC and converting it to 12 volts DC. I did check, it is a DC right here, there's not AC. So those discrete components on the back is a small rectifier. If these were AC, they'd be flickering. They'd be flickering at 50 to 60 hertz, the standard cycle. So they'd be flashing 60 times a second. You normally don't see it with the naked eye, but the camera can pick it up, and some people can see the flicker. I can see the flicker of LEDs on AC. So, if one or all of these fail, soldering inside this little cup is going to be a pain. If you would need a pinpoint needle on your soldering iron, like so. I actually have one that's smaller than this. This one's the 2nd smallest. And patience and magnifying glasses and tweezers. I would recommend tweezers with a ceramic tip. They don't conduct the heat or the electricity, and you're less likely to solder your tweezers to the wires. What I would do personally, if it was mine, and this broke, is you can still use the cup. I would just take the LEDs, I would solder new ones together, probably white still, to blend. I would solder them on top. Run these 2 wires either around the cup or through 2 of the holes, since there are 1, 2, 3, no, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes in this plastic cup pointing up, and solder them on top. And then you can bend them down so they aren't too high above your baseline. So currently, there's that little notch. They do this. And then of course you got the one right here pointing this way and one on the other side pointing that way. This area is being so small, if I was going to replace it and I didn't want to try and finagle inside this little cap and possibly belt the cap, burn myself, short the wires together, etc., I would just still use the cap, so I have a center point. I would feed the 2 wires up through, and then I would solder my lights and then adjust them appropriately. I know I just made them in a big mound. And then to hold them in place, just put a blob of hot glue. And then hot glue this back down to the base. That would be the easiest way to do it. You do want to remember that, at least on my piece, I'm sure they're all the same. The black wire is the hot and the white wire is the ground. Most low voltage stuff, black wire is the ground and white wire would be hot. That we normally be used to, especially if you're like house wiring here in the US. Black is usually the hot and white is the neutral or the return. But on a lot of cars, white is ground. So that is the coloring code they're using. White is ground or negative, and black is hot or positive. Hopefully this makes sense. I'm not an artist. But I would basically feed the 2 wires up, solder my lights together in a ring, similar to that, but not pointing up, pointing down, so it's a literal flat ring, and then hot glue the center down, and then adjust my lights. Depending on how long you cut your leads, depends on how much you can adjust them. Here is the same size LED. It's a 3mm, and you can see how long those leads are. They are approximately, well, the negative is 1 inch and the positive is 1 1/16. So they're cut really short on those. They're cut almost to where these flat divots are. And if you cut them that short, you don't have a lot to work with. But if you leave them this long, it's too much. So if you decide to do this yourself, find a happy medium. Make sure you put them in series, not parallel, because if you put them in parallel, as soon as you plug it in, you're going to pop them. This LED right here has a forward voltage of 5 volts. This one would not work here. If I put all 4 of them in, that means it'd need 20 volts. At 12 volts power, they'd be really dim. But these are a much brighter, much stronger LED. These 4 right here are, I think they're called straw hat, white, and they're 3.1 volt forward voltage. That is what they're running them at. The range is a little bit higher and lower. It's probably 2.8 to 3.4, right in that area. But right now this house is sending 3.1 volts or 12.4 volts total to the 4 lights, which comes out to 3.1 volts each. So if you have this house and this LED cluster is bad, you're going to have to dismantle your house. As much as it sucks and it's scary, I'm hoping I made it a little bit visible so you can see how to mostly do it. Trial and error. You saw my trial and error, so you know what steps to avoid if you have this. For reassembly, gotta put the motor back on. I gotta feed these wires back through and put a little hot glue in here, and then push this back down over the steel rod. I am not going to use the hard glue. I am going to use, like they did here, I am going to use hot glue. Guess I got to bend the tree out so I can stick it back in. So I am going to hot glue this all back together, so that way if I do keep it, I can fix it in the future, or if somebody else gets the house, because again I am still debating on getting rid of this house, I can tell them that all they have to do is carefully pry up the edges with a pocket knife so you have a larger surface area, or a spudger, which has a large surface area but it's more flimsy. That's the reason I didn't do this. And slowly dismantle this piece. Then you can get to this LED cluster. If your LED cluster tests okay, but it still doesn't come on, it's possible this wire got damaged. You can see how thin it is. It's probably 26, 28 gauge wire. It's super thin. It's a little bit thicker than a human hair. Or one of the discrete components on this circuit board failed, which could be a capacitor or a bridge rectifier, resistor, etc. It can be diagnosed. There is nothing proprietary on this circuit board. It is just basic parts, which is really nice. The hardest thing you're going to have doing is fixing this when they go out. And the probability of them using LEDs in here that are going to fail soon are pretty slim. LEDs have a really good lifespan, and that's probably why they did it this way. Whereas the light in here, if it fails, you can replace it easy because this is your main light. Probably does not have the same lifespan. Most LEDs are like 7 to 11 years, you know, some ridiculous number. I never get that long out of them, but you never know. So, reassembly is just the opposite of disassembly, with the exception of the glue I'm going to use. So I'm going to reassemble this thing. As far as these pieces go, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to use the hard Gorilla type glue like that. I am going to use dabs of hot glue. So that way, if I ever have to take this thing apart in the future, or the next person, if they want better access to this center section, they don't have to pry this stuff out, these two, or cut them out. This just falls out. So it's just for the future. They're built to look nice and work, but they're not built to be repaired. So when they get repaired, it's best to put them back together in a way that if you keep it, you can't access it one more time. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this thing. You don't need to watch me do it. You saw me take it apart. I will come back at the end, show you that it's back together, show you that it still works, and then I'll put it back in its box, at least for the time being. So hopefully this has been informative and it's helped you out, and we'll go from there. Thank you. Okay, it's back together. So, voila. Center it in the screen. Okay. Bottom's glued in. And for those who've never seen it, I'm going to show it to you in the dark. There is the front. You can see the rotating aquarium, the flashing lights on the octopus or squid, not sure. There's your sign. Your sign is actually backlit. These three lights on the front are fake. Your main light, which lights everything else. There's your top. There's the side with the holes for the windows. The other side, which is just the aquarium plus a crack in the wall, and then the back. So this is repairable if you want to take the time to take it apart. That is the end result. So if you want to work on taking it out and breaking the glue joints, you can actually replace the dim the lights a little here so that way it looks a little better. Easiest way, break all your columns free, separate it from under the roof. I did glue all the moss back on too. There, 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 and there. So it's all back to where it's supposed to be. So it covers the missing paint from where the moss was. As far as this goes, break the moss free. Use a rigid, long, thin blade like a pocket knife. You can use a spudger if you have a thicker one, and I would work your way around the columns. You might be like mine, where 3 of the 7 weren't even really attached with anything. There was no glue or adhesive. Once you get this part, wiggle it out from underneath the edge of the roof. It was only attached right here in the corner underneath, well, the moss. Probably the moss is what was holding it. Pop this out. You can separate the plastic from right here where it meets the resin. Pull that out, unscrew the motor, go from there. As far as the drum, it'll be easier if you take it off. You don't have to, I understand. It's a pain. You have 2 layers of plastic that are glued onto 2, 3 crescent rings, or to make a solid ring. It's a pain in the butt. If you want to try and fight with it and do it with a pair of needle nose pliers, needle nose themselves to pull the wires, or a pick, do so. You saw the little diagram. I know it's not the prettiest out there. I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but you get an idea that you do not have to put it back in that cap. You can just glue it to the top. And that you need 3.1 volt white LEDs, cold white, to match what's in here. This light right here is warm white, is what I have it set to. That's cold white. This is warm white. You can tell the difference in the shades. It's pretty obvious. I wouldn't go to any other color. You could technically change the colors and play with them, but you might also have to change a resistor or add a resistor to change the voltages. So, other than that, I hope this was helpful and informative on how to fix the lighting system in here and how to get to the motor if the motor quits turning. So, and after the 900 different ways of me saying it till I could actually read it, you know the part number now. So, sorry about that. The indentations in the metal where they engrave the motor or they press the numbers in isn't very deep in some of the numbers. So I'm sure the plate that it's pressed into flexed, meaning that's why the middle numbers are shallower. So anyhow, that is the Monsters of the Deep teardown and how to access the rotating aquarium part to work on it. And also, if any of your discrete components on the bottom fail, they're all standard, no proprietary chips. So, other than that, hopefully that helped. Until the next one, have a good one. Quick addendum. The schematic I showed wasn't 100% accurate. It was very close, but wanted to show it a little bit better and correct. This would be the way LEDs would normally be looking on a schematic, like I was telling you. You got the 4 LEDs, you got the power going through, positive, negative, your lights. What you have inside there is 4 LEDs in that pattern that are just daisy chained together. In the schematic I showed you in the red pencil, when I erased the line is because I connected them together. I reconnected the line by accident. So, those 4 LEDs, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, they're all hooked together, 2 wires out, and you have 12.4 volts coming in off of this power supply, and each one of these has a 3.1 volt drop across them, which gives you your 12.4. And that's how they look inside. The 2 LED wires are close together, and then they just soldered the hots and the negatives to each other. So this would be a plus for your incoming power, and then you have your minus for your outgoing, which goes back into the positive or the plus. So on your LEDs, that's how they'd be wired. I should have brought the Sharpie, that way you could see it better. So that's how the LEDs are wired. So if you have to fix it yourself, either replace one of them or replace all 4 or 3 or 2, you just solder the negative and positives together in a straight line or a circle, and then when you get to the last one, make sure that you don't solder those together, and that you have your wires come in. Hopefully this is a little bit better than that little red picture I showed. I'm going to keep it there for a second. And again, this is the correct diagram using the correct symbol for an LED, with the positive over here, the negative over here for the LED or the diode. So just a quick little correction, so that way if you do have to replace the 4, you can do it correctly. Thanks for watching.